is October, people! This is not a drill. Break out your tiny crochet pumpkins, your candles, and your far too much eyeliner, because we are going full cozy on this channel from here on out. Of course, I actually have none of that yet because it's technically still September when I'm recording this, and I think that would be literally illegal. But watch this space. Welcome to Flosstube number 4. My name is Michelle, aka the Giddy Stitcher, and I am a proud multi-crafter who mostly cross-stitches, knits and crochets, but honestly never really met a craft she didn't like at least a little bit. Today's video will be a little bit different to my usual Flosstubes. I am going to cover cross-stitch and all of the usual crafts, but I also want to talk a little bit about a couple of events that I'm joining in with this month. The rest of my content for October is already planned, including a Halloween make-along and hopefully, if we can figure out the technical side, a spooky nighttime craft venture. So if that sounds like the sort of content you might be interested in, you should hang around. Alright, enough intro, it is going to be a busy month, let's make a start. To kick off the cross-stitch section then, I just want to quickly mention a challenge that I've seen a few of my fellow Instagram stitchers joining in with recently. I am of course talking about Whips Be Gone. This challenge was started by Leanne Parsons, aka Devoted Quilter, over on Instagram, and it's all about using the last 100 days of the year in order to set reasonable goals and make slow but sure progress on our whips. Maybe even finish some along the way. It seems like a bit of fun, and there are even actual prizes involved. So I've taken the executive decision to replace my usual monthly craft goal setting with this instead. Our first task for the challenge was to decide on some priority whips for the first quarter of the challenge. So we'll go over what I've chosen for that a little bit later in the video. If you would like to join in with the challenge, it's definitely not too late. I'll make sure all of the information you need is in the description below the video. Let's get these whips under control. Okay, now we can finally get on to stitching progress. Hooray! First up, because you've already seen it all over Instagram and I'm just super excited and I'll take any opportunity to show it off or to look at it myself. Yep, it's the world map. Ta-da! I'm filming this on Wednesday, the 29th, I think, of September, and this is where we currently are. 4 floss tubes in, and look, I have finally figured out how to hold my projects without covering my face. For those who haven't seen it before, this pattern is Steampunk World Map by a shop called Circle Cross on Etsy. I will link in the description below. And they also have other cool patterns in the same style as this one, like this cool dragon or this seasonally appropriate skull. Here's a close-up. Ooh. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, didn't she promise to get all of Africa, Europe and Asia done in September? And you would be right, I did. However, 2 things did get in the way of that a little bit. For some reason, lost to the murky depths of time, past me decided to make a time-lapse of this project. Now, I have to admit it's looking very cool. But it's also very time-consuming because every time I finish a cog or a selection of small bits and pieces, I have to load this up into the Lightbox and take a photo. Really breaks the flow. The second thing to slow me down this month is just some boring health stuff that you don't want to hear about. So, do we mark this one as a fail? It's kind of tempting, I admit. On the other hand, there is technically a whole day and a half between now and the end of the month, where I could maybe get that finished if I really try. Maybe that's doable? Absolutely no chance. Okay, moving on. So the other project I've been really into stitching this month is Alpine by Satsuma Street. If you've been watching my floss tubes from the beginning, you've seen this turn from an indistinct blue blob to some indistinct blue and purple blobs to some indistinct blue and purple blobs surrounded by things that may or may not one day turn into trees. And now it's all starting to come together. I had been hopping all around the place doing things in a little bit of a weird order because I didn't own all of the called for colours. So this month I sat down and worked out which of the shades I could substitute from stash and which I would need to buy. I bought those last few on our recent Leeds trip, so now I'm all set. I want to get the frame finished off on this one ASAP because I just think that's going to be like really satisfying. I've said in previous videos that this style of pattern with big blocks of colour is just like very me. Mostly because we can watch TV without it making me completely lose count and make a ton of mistakes, which is always nice. Sometimes you're not in it for the challenge and you just want to chill, you know? I honestly don't know how much chance I'll get to work on this month, but progress is progress, right? Yes, any progress, no matter how small, is progress. Which of course brings us on to the ever-present, slow as all heck, pixels that made us stitch along. You might recall that last month I failed at my goal of stitching up all of the colours that I already owned in the A, but I'm happy to report that I have managed it this month. Ta-da! Bad news is that so many of those colours were only needed for a couple of stitches that it looks like I've basically made no progress. I suppose maybe like this red up here and there were a few lines here that weren't there last month. Oh man, that is super depressing. Oh well, all of the remaining colours are bought and kitted up, so hopefully I'll get to do a few more satisfying chunks of colour soon. You're going to be seeing a handful of new stitches in this one every month for the rest of our natural lives, so make your peace with it now, would be my advice. So those continue really to be my 3 main cross-stitch projects. In my last Flosstube, I asked you all what you thought about 2 patterns that I've been considering as my first ever full coverage piece. So thank you to everyone who left a comment, discussed my options with me on Instagram, or even voted unexpectedly in real life, thus outing yourself as a secret watcher of my channel. So far, the consensus seems to be that Autumn Stories is a goer, which is absolutely fine by me since that's the first one I saw that really grabbed my attention. Of course, we've all voted for it while we're in a kind of approaching autumn mood, and I expect it won't be finished until like spring 2035 or something, but whatever. Onto the Christmas wish list it goes. And now I kind of need your help again. See, a couple of months ago I framed my very first ever FFO, and since then I've been looking through my older projects and deciding which of them I would like to do something with rather than just keep them rolled up on a shelf or stuffed in a drawer. There's the Blackwork Brilliance pattern from a few months ago, which I'm still umming and ahhing about. And then there's this one too. This is Sunset on Mountains by Pigeon Coop Designs. It's a really small project, obviously, but I just enjoyed stitching it so much. I started it, I believe, on a 24 hours of cross-stitch weekend, and I just had a really good time interacting with everyone else doing the challenge. It just has some nice memories associated with it, you know, so I'd like to use this for something. The problem is, the black background, the colours in it, just doesn't really go with anything in our house, so it's not easy to just hang up on the wall. So, what do? Actual finishes of things, I need your advice. Do I just put it in a hoop and then collect other similar projects and then just hang them wherever in a sort of gallery wall and hope that no one notices they don't match? Or is there a more creative way you can give me to use something like this? All suggestions welcome, there are no stupid ideas. Thank you in advance. Okay, that is sadly it for cross stitch this month. A little samey as last month, so apologies, but surely one day soon I will get time to actually start new interesting projects, right? Right? Alright, time for some Flosstuber shoutouts. Some people popping up in this section going forward might be tiny channels like my own, or they might be bigger channels who wouldn't notice it in their analytics if every single person who watches this video went and subscribed to them immediately. But whatever, good content gets my shoutouts. First up then this month, Stitches by Shelby. I love Shelby's channel. Projects, her personality, everything is just spot on. She even somehow has the power to stitch things that I've decided I don't want to stitch, but then I see her finished object and then it makes me want to go back and stitch the thing I didn't even want to stitch. I don't know what that's all about. But really, you can't go wrong with her channel, and also she's just recently hit the 1,000 subscriber mark, so go! Be a part of that celebration. My second recommendation this week is Peyton at Stitching Out a Sky. Now, full disclosure, Peyton only has 2 floss tubes so far, and also the last time I saw her post anything was 4 weeks ago. But I did enjoy those first 2 videos so much that I'm going to recommend her anyway, and hopefully she will be back soon. I just love listening to her talk about cross stitch and crochet, and just she has the most interesting life in general that I really am kind of intrigued by more than anything else. She comes across as very genuine and likeable, and yeah, big recommend. So that's 2 channels, one still very small, one in the process of becoming bigger, both very much worth your time. I have of course linked them both down in the description, so why not check them out once you're finished watching me? On which note, we're about to move on to non-cross stitch news, so if you are ducking out here, thank you as always for popping in, and I hope to see you next time. For the rest of you, more crafts! Knitting and crochet. Now, this section title is a little bit misleading. Fair warning, it is mostly crochet this month. After finishing the knitted crop top last month, the only active knitting project I have left on the go is actually these socks. That sock is upside down. These socks. Honestly, I am enjoying working on these here and there, but they're just like so far down the to-do list that I'm just picking it up, doing one round and then having to go do something else. What I will say about these is that the yarn I'm using includes yak down, so they are incredibly warm. And also, with this colour, they're just like the most autumn appropriate socks in the world. So I think I probably should make an effort to actually finish these before the season changes again. For some reason, I have no real other knitting plans at the minute. I think I did mention on Instagram recently that I always seem to get super into crochet at this time of year. It's just part of the fun of multi-crafting. You go through phases and you're free to kind of dive into whatever happens to be taking your fancy at the moment. I did buy this awesome Halloween yarn from Bellwether Yarns in Leeds, again on our trip that you may have seen last week. But I do know better than to say I will make this into something by this Halloween. Maybe, at a push, if I start planning something now, I'll have something knitted up for next Halloween, but no promises. Yeah, that's how bad it is. Speaking of projects taking forever, remember that giant granny square I was on with last month? Well, it did get blocked this month, and it did influence at least one other person to make a blanket, so, you know, my work here is done. Problem is, it's supposed to be one half of a top, and I've not actually got round to starting the second half of the top quite yet. Still, one half is better than no half, and what is our mantra this month? Progress is progress. After blocking, it is definitely big enough to turn into a top if I was straight up and down. Unfortunately, I have, like, the world's most wildly proportioned hips. There are 2 options I can see for this top. Option 1, add some elastic to the bottom and have it be a sort of gathered under crop top. Or 2, add some kind of extra panel at the sides. Admittedly, it seems like it might be forever and a day until that decision actually has to be made, but why not cast your vote now anyway? There's even a chance by the time it becomes relevant, I'll remember what won. So, you may or may not have seen the video ages ago now, where I created a spreadsheet to help me figure out what to stock up on in terms of crochet projects to sell over the end of year rush. Really just to make a little bit of extra pocket money while I try and figure out what on earth I'm doing with my life. At the time, I was looking into doing an actual craft fair. But after venturing out of the house a bit lately and finding how uncomfortable crowds are making me still, I think that might be better knocked on the head for now. Don't get me wrong, I would still absolutely love to do a fair, but maybe it's just best put off for next year, and I will spend this winter maybe just streamlining my product range, making sure the things that I'm making are profitable, all that kind of good stuff. Sadly, it does mean no craft fair vlog in our near future, but we'll just have to overcome. So that's the bad news. But the good news is I bought a ton of yarn. You might have seen my unboxing of this lot last week, or the ridiculous bed of yarn that I made and posted on Instagram. But as you can see behind me, it is now all actually put away nice and tidy, and it's giving me a little bit more of a colour coordinated backdrop as well, which is a bonus. My big goal for last month was to get one of everything that I plan to sell made up, just so I could make sure that my material costs and time estimates were correct in the spreadsheet. So I'm happy to report that I now have basically a pile of crochet. Cowls, ear warmers, coasters, my ever popular cup cozies. It's not a super wide range, but it's better to start off small and see what sells and go from there. In some very tenuously related crochet news, we bought some new bedding this month. I'm going to show you this pillowcase because we're still waiting on the new quilt and other bits and pieces to arrive, but you get the idea. It's grown up, it's cozy as anything you've ever seen in your life, and at 37 years old, it's the first time I've ever actually got to just choose my own bedding like a real adult. Very exciting. But I think we can all agree that what this needs is some kind of autumn-coloured chunky crochet throw. So I'm not saying that's something I will necessarily get round to doing, but it is on my mind. Let's just leave it there. Okay, other crafts. Let's go. One of the things we talked about in my last update was that I've been putting a little bit too much pressure on myself in learning to sew and trying to run before I can walk. So to rein it in a little bit, I decided to scrap the project I've been planning and instead make a patty pocket skirt. Partially because it looks pretty, partially because the lovely Teresa from Lost My Thread has offered me help if I get stuck, but mostly because the pockets on it will hold an entire Nintendo Switch. So to that end, I bought my first invisible zip, some black hook closures that I'm sure I'll find plenty of other use for in other projects too, and some interfacing that I'm pretty sure is the right kind, but if sewing pattern designers could just say which is the correct weight of interfacing to buy for the pattern, that would be really good. Thank you. I've bought the pattern and spent an entire weekend piecing it together, cursing my inability to do so with any accuracy whatsoever, and filming time lapses while stupidly sitting out of frame. And, of course, I've bought the fabric. Look at this! I mean, words cannot describe how amazing this fabric is. It is so not at all what I went shopping for, but it is so exactly what I needed. The fabric is quite narrow compared to what the pattern asks for, so I'm having to be a little bit creative with piecing it together. But I do have a feeling that maybe this will be the project that finally convinces my brain sewing is fun and not terrifying, which would be really good. Oh my god, I love it so much. I cannot wait to wear this skirt. Now it's time to talk about the second event going on this month, and unlike the Whips Be Gone challenge, this is an actual real-life event. It's the Great British Ghost Hunt 2021, and I found out about this through Ickle Stitches on Instagram, so thank you very much, Steph, for the tip, because I'm so into this. Basically, it's a ton of crafters coming together to make little ghosts of various kinds with whatever skills they have, and hide them all over the country. There's a map where we can add our hiding places, and then in the week running up to Halloween, people can go out, take their kids, and just go on a bit of a treasure hunt and find these little guys to take home. Normally, I'm going to be completely honest, I might find this sort of thing a little bit twee, but after the year and a half that we have had, what harm is a little bit twee? I mentioned it to some friends, completely expecting them to just give me kind of a patronising pat on the head and roll their eyes, but surprisingly, some of them were really into it. So we have one who wants to make crochet ghosts, another who wants to make little sewn plushie ghosts, and the only question was what I could do. Since crochet is already spoken for, I got to thinking about what other crafts I might be able to use to mass produce ghosts in a small amount of time. And I've come up with two. One craft I'm already comfortable with, which is resin art, and another that I've literally never done in my entire life, which is needle felting. At the time of recording, sadly my needle felting supplies have not yet turned up, although fingers crossed for later in the week, which would then give me 3 weeks in order to learn a brand new craft to the point where I can make something recognisable as a ghost that is good enough that people will want to pick it up and take it home. What could go wrong, right? There's always the resin ghosts as a backup. That is all I'll say about the ghost hunt today because I'm planning a whole video on this later in the month. But it's a good excuse to try some new stuff, so of course I was always going to do it. If you'd like to join, the more the merrier. Again, I will make sure all the information you need is down in the description. We would love to have you. Now, the last thing on my list from last month was to check out the possibilities for making myself some sort of custom stitching frame. Since using even weave for the first time, I have been going back and forth over the idea of investing in a Q-snap or similar, but I keep seeing all of those cool videos and tutorials from stitchers in the US who are making their own stands and frames from PVC piping, and it just keeps calling my name. The problem with that, it turns out, is that pipe sizes in the US are completely different to those in the UK. So while over there you can buy the perfect size to use with the clips that come with Q-snaps, over here it's a little more tricksy. It's also unfortunately quite a bit more expensive over here, so it might not end up being the cost-effective solution I was hoping for. But all hope is not yet lost. I have some half sketched out plans for a floor stand and detachable frame using UK dimensions only, and I just need to really sit down and measure it all out and add up the cost. Maybe it'll be worth it, maybe it won't, but I'd rather at least check before going and buying a floor stand that isn't even customised to my craft space, you know? Fingers crossed, that could be a future project for the channel. So, in last month's Flosstube, I set my usual list of craft goals for September, and we've not even really looked at that yet. Let's just very quickly skim through it and see how I did. Investigated frame options. Check. Completed up to Asia on the world map. Don't know yet. Hopefully Friday me will have a good update. We'll just have to see. Still no. Pick stitch A. Check. Alpine colours. Checkaroony. Yeah, I just said that. I love vague progress goals. So easy to hit. One of each crochet product. Yep. Prep for the patty pocket skirt. Well, I have all the physical materials prepped, and it doesn't necessarily specify that I have to also prep mentally. So we're just going to call that a check. As I said earlier, my usual monthly goals list is going to be replaced with the Whips Be Gone challenge list. So let's see about that. Oh, 3 goals is just so hard to narrow down. Okay, think about this. You don't have to finish them, they're just your priority projects that you pledge to make some progress on. Well, I guess the first one should be Ghosts for the Ghost Hunt. Strong blood for the blood god vibes there. Also, I think this might not technically count as an allowed craft for the challenge, but I'm a rebel who plays by her own rules. Then we'll say the steampunk map, because I'm excited for it, but also I feel like a weirdly large number of other people are excited to see that one completed as well. And then, yeah, maybe I'll pledge to make a little bit of progress on that second sock because of the overwhelming autumnness of the yarn. So we have a nice mix of crafts there. Of those 3 things, only the ghosts are really likely to be completed in the first 25 days because those have a deadline. Alright, there we go. Wow, that is so much more manageable than my usual lists. Of course, I will continue working on everything else in the background as well, but maybe without all of that goal-setting pressure, I'll actually manage to enjoy it more for once. What is wrong with me? Hey, you know what? I totally forgot to add a real life section, so I'm just going to do it now with a voiceover. This month we wandered over to the Lake District for a day trip, which used to be a yearly tradition for us in September, but we've been a bit lazy with it the last few years. We had fancy ice cream, Dave was harassed by a swan, and no trip to Bo'ness could be complete without a stop-off at Cockshot Point. You heard me. It's just so peaceful there if you time it right. I could have sat there for hours. I also managed to get out and see a friend who I've basically not seen since we got sent home from uni one Thursday halfway through second year and never went back. What a weird time we live in. I promised him his bowling skills would make it into the video, so here you go, dude. And of course, all of that being outside was well timed, because in the past week the weather has finally turned and both myself and my hay fever are very grateful indeed. Real life update complete. That's it for another Flosstube, which definitely deserves the air quotes even more this month than it usually does. Why don't other crafts have their own special YouTube tag? Like, YarnTube just seems like such low-hanging fruit. Oh well, I'll just obnoxiously start using it and maybe one day I'll be so famous that somebody else decides to join in with me. That'd be nice. If you watched this rambling mess all the way through, thank you very much for sticking with me. I hope you found some mild entertainment at some point in there somewhere. Likes on this video are always appreciated if you can possibly spare them. And of course, if you're not subscribed yet, how are you even going to watch me fail at learning to needle felt? Have a brilliant rest of your day. I will see you next week for some increasingly Halloween themed crafting, and in the meantime, keep making cool stuff. Bye!